Secret Invasion is a television show going on Disney+, and it has nothing to do with the comic series. The comic series was built up over the course of like 5 to 10 years, eventually leading to these superheroes fighting against clone versions of themselves, Skrull versions of themselves. All of your favorite superheroes show up in this fight, something that's kind of lacking from the Secret Invasion television show. And in order to prove that the comic series is so much better than the TV show, I thought we should bring you the Secret Invasion full story right here. This is Comicstorian. I make audio dramas of your favorite comic books. And today we're going to be bringing you the entire Secret Invasion event from the early 2000s. I hope you guys enjoy. Years ago, the Skrulls gathered on a distant world. The throne world had been destroyed and their armada was in ruins. The warriors gather around their queen. The scriptures were right. Here's what shall be done. The queen tells those that gathered. Now, on Earth, Tony looks down at the body before him and he turns to Reed Richards and Hank Pym. The Skrull Empire, they're here now, living amongst us, undetectable. He informs them that the Avengers went to Japan and Elektra was killed, but when she died, she changed into a Skrull. Elektra, the ninja assassin, was a Skrull. For how long? Pym asks, but Tony tells them that he doesn't know because no one could detect that she wasn't actually human. Why couldn't anyone tell? Reed asks, and Tony looks at the two smartest men on the planet and tells them that he needs to figure that out. Because this is just the beginning. I know it. Meanwhile, aboard the Peak, the Sword space station that monitors for extraterrestrial threats, everyone is greeting Dum Dum Dugan, who has come to inspect them? The station was put on alert as the alarms blare at the approach of an alien spacecraft. What have we got? Agent Miranda asks as she steps up to the consoles. Sword agents are tracking a Skrull transport ship as it barrels towards Earth. Coordinate estimation puts it right smack dab in the Savage Land, one of her officers shouts. She nods. Get me Tony Stark, now! At the lab, Tony continues to work with Hank and Reed, his armor scanning them the whole time, trying to discern if they're actually Skrulls in disguise. But he's interrupted by Brand's call, warning him of the crash landing. Tony nods, heading out the door, not telling Reed or Hank why he's leaving. He flies out of the lab, getting on the comms and asking Spider-Woman to gather the Avengers for a mission. Is this it? Jessica asks. We'll know soon. Stark out, Tony tells her. Jessica immediately reaches for her phone and dials, not bothering to hide the fact from Jarvis, who stands nearby. Skrull ship crash land in the Savage Land. Tony's gathering the troops. At this point, I trust you more than Stark. You might want a head start. Wouldn't you want a head start? She asks before hanging up. At the hideout of the Secret Avengers, Luke Cage hangs up his phone, turning to his team. Are you guys ready to piss off everyone? He asks. It doesn't take long for the group to reach Avengers Tower, where Spider-Man quickly launches a web and drops Black Widow. The team rushes forward with the prepped Quinjet boarding it. Man, Natasha's gonna kill me when she wakes up. We used to go out. Clint jokes, and Spider-Man looks at him as he takes a seat. Who haven't you gone out with, Clint? 3 minutes later, Tony arrives with his team. Where the hell is my Quinjet? He asks as he cuts Natasha free. Luke's team flies across the planet at a top speed, quickly reaching the Savage Land, with Tony and his flyers following at a much slower rate. As they land, Spider-Man looks at Luke Cage. How do we know this isn't a Skrull trap? He asks, and Luke looks out the windows at the prehistoric jungle that now surrounds them. I hope it's a Skrull trap. I'm so sick of hiding. I'm sick of not trusting each other. I miss my wife and kid. I want to put this right. I want things to go back to normal, Luke tells him. The team drops in the jungle with Wolverine taking point as he follows his nose. Kazar lives here. We should find him. Spider-Man calls as he whips through the trees, the team passing a destroyed lab. What's this? Echo asks, and Luke tells her that this is where the new Avengers had their first battle. Let's go. This ain't what we're here for, Wolverine tells them. And they continue on until they step out into a clearing, finding a large, crashed Skrull ship. Are you getting anything, Logan? Luke asks, but Wolverine shakes his head. The heroes looking at the ship, discussing whether they should open it. Whatever we're going to do, we gotta do it now, because we ain't alone anymore. Wolverine tells them as he looks up, and Tony and his team have arrived and are now descending upon them. Step away from the ship, you're all under arrest, Tony shouts over the loudspeakers. The two teams stand off with each other. What, now you're claiming ownership of the Savage Land? Clint asks, and Miss Marvel looks at the gathering of heroes. Come on, guys. You're smart enough to know when to stand down. Luke, seriously, stand down. Carol tries to tell her friend. Luke thinks about it for a moment before turning back to the ship. Nah, I'm opening it. Explaining that the fact that Tony doesn't want him to means that he thinks he should open it. Aboard the sword ship, Peak, Agent Brand and Dum Dum Dugan are watching the live feed. What does this mean? She asks. I think it means that Luke Cage thinks that Stark's a Skrull. Reaching up and taking off his bowler hat when his eyes suddenly goes white. He loves you, Dugan whispers. The Peak suddenly explodes in a ball of fire that quickly goes out into space. Agent Brand looks around in shock. She and her crew are saved by the oxygen bubbles that now surround them. Meanwhile, over at the Avengers Tower, Jarvis steps forward, putting a strange disc into the Avengers operating system. He loves you, he says as warnings begin to flash across the screen. Meanwhile, back in the Savage Land, Tony's armor begins to spark and lock up. He falls to the ground screaming. Everyone looks at him in shock, and he shouts for them all to get back. Carol rushes forward. Helicarrier 1, this is Miss Marvel. We're in the Savage Land and we need an immediate evac of Tony Stark, she shouts, but there is no answer. Across the world, everything connected to Tony's system has been infected. And onboard Helicarrier 1, Maria Hill orders the crew to evacuate as the ship begins to drop out of the sky, plummeting towards New York City. Stark's plants and satellites all go out across the world. The prisons that are now controlled by the system since Stark took over as the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. are suddenly opened, with supervillains quickly rioting and escaping. At Thunderbolt's Mountain, Norman Osborn is aware of this attack, the system's suddenly beginning to spark, and he orders his team to leave. But the wall suddenly explodes outward to reveal Mar-Vell as he flies towards them. Meanwhile, over in New York, Susan Richards seemingly returns from a vacation, with everyone shocked to see her. But she walks past them all without a word, stepping into Reed's lab and activating a massive portal to the negative zone. He loves you, she whispers as the portal begins to grow rapidly, eating everything up in the Baxter building as it grows. Susan! Johnny screams as he bursts into flames to protect his niece and nephew. Meanwhile, back in the Savage Land, the teams have lowered Tony to the ground, groans of pain escaping his lips as his armor locks up. I'm taking him, Sentry says, ordering the others to remove his armor, but Wolverine suddenly sniffs the air and turns. Everyone looks up at the same time, their eyes widening in shock. The ship has opened, and inside it reveals some of the Earth's mightiest heroes, clad in costumes that are decades old. Oh my stars and garters, New Beast exclaims. I was about to say sweet Christmas, New Luke Cage shouts. Are we back on Earth? New Miss Marvel asks as she looks at Captain America, an individual that is supposed to be dead right now. Yeah, I was about to say, because I know who I am, but who are these guys supposed to be? The new Wolverine says as he looks at the surprised heroes who were already in the Savage Land. But back up in space, Agent Brand is trying to call for help, warning that she and her crew only have 10 minutes of oxygen. But her words trail off as she looks up in shock, seeing a fleet of Skrull ships appearing and rocketing towards the Earth. Back over in Stark's lab, Reed suddenly looks up. I think I got it. I know how they made themselves undetectable. He looks at Hank with a smile, but his friend is already aiming an alien blaster at him. I do, Hank tells him with a nod, firing the weapon, which hits. Reed's body then disassembles, turning Reed into silly string that drapes over the lab. He even loves you, Hank says as his face begins to morph, and he becomes a Skrull once again. Back over in the Savage Land, the two groups of heroes are now facing off, with the returned older heroes believing that this might be another Skrull trick. Oh, you cut the bull, Luke shouts, but it's Ares who orders the Avengers to retreat. Stark, Danvers, all of you Avengers, you go back to the mainland now. This is a trap, Ares says, hefting his axe and telling them that he will hold off the invaders as long as he can, but Luke refuses. You all need to get ready to get your asses kicked, he snaps as he rushes forward, the secret Avengers and the Avengers following his lead, the Avengers clashing with the newly returned, decades-old heroes. As the blast of energy flies through the air, Carol grabs Tony, flying him away from danger. Tony, I know you're hurting, but you've got to get it together, man. We need you. Back on the ground, the heroes continue to fight, kicking and punching and hitting each other with energy blasts. Clint in his Ronin armor whirling around at the older costumed versions of himself. He knocks him out with a blow from his nunchucks, reaching for his old bow and quiver. Like I haven't been through enough this year. He snaps, grabbing the weapons, rushing towards the tree line, avoiding more energy attacks and superpowered heroes rushing towards him. This is all kinds of crazy! He hisses as he fires the arrows, hitting Beast in the shoulder and Emma Frost in the thigh. He whirls around, firing another arrow at Cap, but the Sentinel of Liberty whirls around, blocking the arrow with his shield. Damn, maybe that is... Clint whispers, but the entire fight is interrupted as a T-Rex comes roaring into the clearing and scatters the fighting heroes. Nearby, Tony asks Carol to fly him to the lab that the team passed earlier. It's the mutated Citadel. It belongs to the indigenous people of the Savage Land. There was a laboratory there once upon a time. Hopefully it's still there, he says, and they land inside and he quickly looks around. I've been infected with what I must assume is an alien virus. All of my tech is damaged. I have to rebuild from start. He coughs and he staggers towards the console, telling Carol that she needs to go back to the mainland and find out what's going on. What are you going to do? Carol asks him, and he looks up at her as he begins to get to work. I built my first armor with a lot less than this. I'm gonna do the one thing the Skrulls can't imitate. Use my brain. Carol finally nods, flying out of the lab, leaving Tony to his work. Back in the jungle, Clint has taken to the trees, readying his bow as he tracks other heroes, unsure of who his friends are and who are the Skrulls. On the jungle floor, Wolverine pops his claws, stepping out to face the same-looking Luke Cage that he came here with. I don't care what you look like. You come near me and I'll gut you. Except you can't. Unbreakable skin. Luke points out, and they both turn to see a Spider-Man that is getting squashed by the T-Rex's foot, his death already morphing him back into a Skrull. Good. That means they're all Skrulls. I just don't see the angle. What's the Skrulls' plan? Luke continues, and Wolverine nods, pointing out that the Skrull have them fighting a war when they can't trust the soldiers next to them. That he thinks they're trying to take control of the planet without destroying it. But Wolverine suddenly turns, seeing a Mockingbird leaning over the body of Skrull Hawkeye. He rushes forward, his claws prepared, and tears are falling from Mockingbird's eyes. I knew we had a Skrull or two in our group before we crashed, but man, this pisses me off. I'm not a Skrull! She tells Wolverine as she pulls off her mask. He grabs her, lifting her into the air, and an arrow comes through the trees, hitting him in the shoulder. Back away from the girl! Clint says as he leaps down on the Ronin outfit. He rushes forward, drawing another arrow, aiming it at Bobby's head. Tell me something about October 12th! He hisses, and she's shocked to hear Clint's voice. October 12th! He snaps. She lowers her head, revealing that she and Clint lost their daughter before she was born. They thought her birthday would have been October 12th. Clint pulls off his mask and stares at her. You died, he whispers, and she begins to cry. No, I didn't, she tells him and embraces him, and they both kiss, until finally Clint pulls away looking at Wolverine. I know, but this is my call. There's no way that they would know what she just said. Nobody knows that. Bobby looks at them, informing them that the other Skrulls must have infiltrated their group. But that's Captain America for sure. He's the one that got us back to Earth. But the others know the truth about Cap, that at the end of Civil War, he was shot dead. Back in New York, the young Avengers aren't too sure what to do. Not sure how they can help as the Negative Zone portal continues to grow and swallow the Baxter building. But as the ships begin to land, the Skrulls begin to invade the city, armed with weapons and abilities of the heroes of Earth. Everyone bring a costume? Patriot says as he looks at his friends. The SHIELD helicarrier has crashed into the ocean. Maria Hill orders everyone to get a status update and heads to the flight deck, her eyes widening in shock as she sees Jarvis standing on the deck, lightning and rain crashing around him. Well, that's just Peaches, she whispers, and Jarvis turns with a smile, walking towards her. I was wondering if you'd be ever so kind as to offer us your full and total surrender. Meanwhile, over at Thunderbolt Mountain, Venom is launched away after mounting a counterattack. Mar-Vell prepares to kill another of the Thunderbolts, but pauses as a tear falls from his eyes. You can't do it, can you? Norman asks as he pulls himself out of the rubble. And my guess is that you're not exactly who you're dressed as, he says as he rubs a cut on his head. He smiles, holding out a hand. My name is Norman Osborn. This is my office, and you've trashed it. And my people that you just smacked around. Would you like to have a drink and talk about it? Meanwhile, over in Times Square, the invasion has begun. The Skrull are attacking the city, with the young Avengers trying their hardest to hold them back. Kate Bishop manages to leap over another blast of energy. Guys, this is a little bit over our heads, don't you think? She shouts, with Patriot leaping through the air, saving a child from being crushed by a car. What are we supposed to do, Kate? Leave? He shouts as the others continue to fight around them. Vision warns the young heroes that he can't get in touch with either the Avengers or the Initiative at Camp Hammond. They're Skrulls, and I'm half one. Maybe I can talk to them. Hulkling shouts as he pulls a street sign off of someone. He rushes forward, trying to speak with the Skrulls and ask them to stop, but the aliens turn on him with their weapons, blasting him and tearing apart his skin. Wiccan tries to rush forward to help, but the Skrull with Giant Man's powers steps forward, punching him down, knocking him across the street and into a building. The young Avengers move to help their friends, but Kate points up into the sky with relief. Guys, it's gonna be okay, the Initiative is here, she shouts, and the heroes in training leap into the fight with Gauntlet calling out to them. Teams of 3, hold the line until cavalry comes. Nothing fancy, he shouts as he punches the giant Skrull in the head, knocking him away. Back in the Savage Land, Tony is sweating as he continues to work on his armor. The alien virus is hitting him like pneumonia, but he looks up as Jessica Drew steps through the doorway. How you feeling, Tony? She asks, and he glares at her before returning to his work. Not to be impolite, but I'd as soon not talk to you or anyone till we figure this out. He tells her, sweat still pouring out of his forehead, and she smiles. You can relax now. You did it. Your work on Earth is done. You'll go down in our people's history as the greatest soldier the Armada has ever had, and you will always and forever have the love of your queen, she says, stepping forward, kissing him, but Tony pulls away, not believing what she's saying, telling her that he isn't a Skrull. I know that's what you think. That's what you were trained to think, she tells him, but he refuses to believe it, even as she tells him that everything that has happened was according to his plan. Back in the city, the Skrulls are winning. Their strength is too much. Local reporters watch as the Skrulls turn their energy weapons on Vision. You will not win, Vision tells them before he's destroyed. The Skrulls then turn their attention to the rest of the heroes. But they pause as the city begins to quake and the buildings begin to rumble, and an energy blast hits one of them, exploding. The others look up in shock, covered in the green blood of their friend. Nick Fury steps forward with his secret warriors, priming the massive gun that he holds as they power up. All right, commandos, let's turn this thing around, he shouts to his troops as they launch into battle. Back with Reed Richards. He opens his eyes. His body is stretched out, surrounded by Skrull scientists as they prepare to dissect him. Over the Earth, the Skull Armada floats. Their invasion is already underway. Agent Brand floats through space, the crew of the Peak already dead. Her own oxygen almost gone. Far below her, Miss Marvel has reached New York City, but she is shocked to find that it is a war zone, with the Baxter building being swallowed up by the negative zone portal. But as she draws closer, the Skrull forces fly up to meet her and hit her with their energy beams, knocking her to the streets below. She staggers to her feet, shocked to see the combined efforts of the Young Avengers, the Initiative, and Fury's secret warriors holding the Skrulls at bay. Nick Fury? Carol says in surprise, and Fury's secret warriors continue to fight, knocking the Skrull invaders away. All right, you punks, let's wrap this up. I got things to do, Fury shouts. Carol leaps into the fight, lashing out at any nearby Skrulls. Not sure you Skrulls brought enough, she shouts, but one of the Skrulls grabs her by the throat, a blast from Fury's massive rifle, bringing the alien warrior down. Carol staggers to her feet as Fury gathers everyone around him to be teleported away. What about Miss Marvel? Stonewall asks, and Fury steps forward, raising his weapon. I'll take care of this one, he says before firing a blast that knocks Carol Danvers away. Skrull a Skrull. Fury growls before the secret warriors disappear. Carol is shocked as she slams into the ground, the remaining Skrulls quickly surrounding her. But back in the Savage Land, Natasha presses her back against the wall, listening as Jessica Drew continues to tell Tony that he is actually a Skrull sleeper agent, that he's been working towards the invasion of Earth, and that the real Tony Stark is long dead. Your real name is Kalriki Dulu, Jessica tells him, and Natasha steps out, bringing up her pistol. But there's a rustling in the jungle behind her, and she whirls around to see Jean Grey and Beast step out of the jungle. Natasha dives through the air, firing her pistol into both mutants until they drop, transforming into Skrulls right before her eyes. She turns, stepping into the lab, aiming her pistol at Tony Stark, who is now alone. You didn't happen to see where she went, did you? Oh, Jessica! Natasha calls out as she scans the room and moves forward, grabbing Tony, who is still weak. She did a number on you. Black Widow whispers, leaning down, giving Tony a shot of adrenaline that keeps him on his feet. Might be a Skrull. He gasps at her, but Natasha shakes her head. You're not a Skrull. She was working for you. She tells him, and he shakes his head, but Natasha explains that the Skrulls are working for him because he is one of the 5 people on the planet that can stop them. It's not enough to take you out. They want you defeated. Tony, Skrull or not, I'm asking you right now, do you want to kill me or kill them? He nods, looking up at her. Them. He gasps, and she smiles. Let's go with that feeling then, and worry about the rest later. Natasha suddenly whirls around, firing as Wolverine steps through the door. The rounds chew through him and he drops to the floor. Damn it, Tasha! He gasps as the bullets push out of his skin and he begins to heal. Sorry about that, I'm shooting first and asking questions later until further notice. The 2 heroes turn to Tony and ask him what his next move is. We need Reed Richards, he tells them. Meanwhile, up in space, Agent Brand has managed to sneak aboard one of the Skrull ships before her oxygen gave out. Inside, she is shocked to discover that the aliens have captured Reed Richards. Below them, Maria Hill is still speaking with Jarvis, asking why he thinks that he'll be able to get her off of the ship before he dies. I don't think that you're seeing the gravity of your situation, Jarvis tells her as all of the agents around Maria shapeshift into Skrulls and aim their weapons at her. We're prepared to accept your surrender, Jarvis tells her. Back in New York, the battle has ended and now the Skrulls have begun to corral the civilians. But they look to the sky as lightning cracks above. A god has arrived and he is not alone. The city's symbol of hope also joins the battle. Meanwhile, Norman Osborn continues speaking to Mar-Vell. Let me tell you, I know something about having voices in my head. Voices pulling you in different directions. Only one person can decide who you are inside and out, and that is you. He says, asking Mar-Vell if he knew that he was a Skrull before they activated him. No, the powerful hero whispers, and Norman nods. You thought you were the Kree warrior Mar-Vell, a man of honor, the warrior, Earth's protector. You thought you were here to protect us in our time of need. He reaches out and puts a hand on Mar-Vell's shoulder. I'm so sorry, he says softly, and Mar-Vell suddenly bellows with rage, flying away. The rest of Norman's soldiers rushing into the room, and Norman straightens his tie as he watches Mar-Vell flee. He then turns back to his men, ordering them to search for Venom. The rest of the Thunderbolts on their feet. We're at war, he tells them all. Meanwhile, the Skrulls have begun to broadcast their message to the world. In the base of the Secret Warriors, Nick Fury orders everyone to listen, and everyone around the world watches the computer screens as the Skrulls begin to take on the vision of their favorite celebrities and politicians, the ones that everyone trusts. The Skrulls explain that the Earth is now a part of their empire, that the Skrulls have no need to attack the people, and that they will only fight against those that fight them. They promise that they are here to help mankind fix the Earth and usher in a new era of peace. Meanwhile, up in space, Abigail Brand has begun to fight back. She manages to defeat 2 guards and grab their weapons, leaping down into the science room where they're about to dissect Reed Richards. After the soldiers are defeated, she rushes to the console and tries to order the ship to evacuate, but she pauses, screaming, "Screw it." She hits the button, venting all of the Skrulls into space. Afterwards, she rushes over to Reed, hitting a few more buttons to try and allow him to reform. Dr. Richards, my name is Agent Abigail Brand. I am the director of SWORD, and we are at war with the Skrull Empire. I need you too. But Reed rears up, grabbing her by the throat. My children! Skrull! Where's my wife? Give them to me or I will kill you right now! He snarls at her, but he releases her when he realizes that she didn't shapeshift. She drops to the floor, turning back to the computers. He then realizes what is going on Earth. I know what we need, he whispers to himself. Aboard her helicarrier, Maria glances at the Skrulls that now surround her, but she only smiles, trying to tell Jarvis a funny story about life model decoys. But Jarvis just shakes his head and orders his soldiers to shoot her. Rounds rip through Maria Hill and she falls to the ground, revealing the mechanical workings underneath her skin. High above them, the real Maria Hill aims her sniper rifle, opening fire. They whirl and return fire, but Maria leaps away, ordering the helicarrier to self-destruct. She falls through the air and activates a jetpack on her back, flying away as the helicarrier and all the Skrulls on board explode behind her. Back on the Skrull ship, Brand wakes up to find Reed working on a computer nearby. I did a genetics test, Miss Brand. I believe you're not a Skrull. Sorry I choked you out. But Brand realizes that the ship is shaking, and Reed explains that they are now under attack. He orders her to get to the bridge and learn how to fly the ship, but there's a massive explosion outside. Are we hit? Brand asks, but Reed shakes his head, looking at the sensors. That wasn't us! It's Miss Marvel! He shouts, and they watch as Mar-Vell flies through the Skrull armada, destroying everything in his path. Brand grabs the controls as Reed shouts for her to get them to New York. She shakes her head. The Earth is dying, Doctor. We're going to New York, but we have a couple of people to pick up first or the show's over. With that, she aims the ship for the Savage Lands. Back in the Savage Lands, the remaining heroes have met with Ka-Zar and Shauna, and no one can trust whether the others are Skrulls. I know which of you are Skrulls and which are not, Emma Frost shouts as she steps out of the jungle with Miss Marvel and Jessica Jones. She promises to make the Skrulls pay for what they did. I'm talking to you, Mr. Spider-Man. I know exactly who and what you are. Spider-Man shakes his head, looking around at the others. Well, okay, now that's a big old lie. I know you're the Skrull. He shouts and everyone begins to argue, preparing to enter the big fight once again. But a blast of energy smashes into the ground around them, and Tony looks up to see Reed Richards leaning out of a Skrull ship overhead. As the smoke clears, the Skrulls have been revealed. The real heroes leaping into fight as Clint turns to Bobby and his eyes widen as he realizes that the woman that he vouched for is a Skrull. With a bellow of rage, he grabs one of Natasha's guns, opening fire, killing the Skrull that had taken the face of his wife. Reed jumps down, wrapping his arms around the Skrull that looked like Sue. Where are my children? You have children? She gasps, and with the fight over, Natasha picks up Tony. See? I told you you're not a Skrull, she says with a smile. The Skrull ship lands and Brand steps out. Ladies and gentlemen of the human race, New York City is under siege and the Earth is under the control of the Skrull Empire. Anyone in the mood to do anything about that, hop on board. Ka-Zar and Shauna promise to hunt down the rest of the Skrulls in the Savage Land as the others board the ship. Luke steps over to Clint, who is kneeling over the body of Skrull Bobby. He tries to console him, but Clint pushes him away. Listen to me, all of you. This doesn't end until every last one of them dies. You hear me? Every last one of them! He yells out. Norvar, also known as Marvel Boy, sees something falling out of the stars. He steers his shield bike over to the destruction and is shocked to see Mar-Vell pull himself out of the wreckage. Norvar helps the Kree warrior. The Skrull Empire! They have taken Earth. You can't let this happen, Mar-Vell gasps as he falls to the ground, and Norvar isn't sure what's happening. Mar-Vell tells him that the Skrull have no honor and will do anything to win. They don't understand the true honor of these people or the Kree. I've learned much being Mar-Vell. I have learned so much. I cannot let this happen. You are here for a reason. He gasps before dying. Norvar is shocked as Mar-Vell shifts into a Skrull before his eyes. Across the planet, the Skrull have taken control. Heroes still offer a resistance, but the Skrull are proving triumphant. Camp Hammond, the Skrull Hank Pym is receiving reports of the remaining superhero population. Some of the Skrulls seem nervous, but he orders them to calm down. Every world the Empire has liberated has gone just as this. This is true, Jessica Drew says as she walks into the room, and he nods at her. Empress, he says, and Jessica tells them that the remaining heroes have been gathered by Reed Richards. We would imagine that they're heading here now, she says, looking at Hank. You have done amazing work, Noel. He thanks her and questions whether Janet Van Dyne is still with the Avengers. She is, Janet says, and Hank smiles. Then we win. Meanwhile, Brand steers the Skrull ship towards New York City. The back is loaded with dozens of heroes. So anyone in the mood to hit at Denny's on the way home? Spider-Man calls out, but the group ignores him. Discussion about how Jessica Drew has been a Skrull and for how long and who else may have been taken is what's going on. But the talk is interrupted as they near the city, shocked by the destruction that the Skrulls have caused in such a short amount of time. The Skrull attack ships are still hovering over the city. Below, the police are trying to help clean things up, with the actual attacks having already ended. They're shocked to find a group of college students with signs that welcome their new alien overlords, believing that the Skrull will help usher in a new era of paradise for the Earth. We've been saved, heroes, you're out of a job! Because utopia means that the fascist stick goes away. The citizens shout at the cops who have asked them to disperse. but they are shocked as one of the massive Skrulls stalk forward. The citizens erupting into panic as the Skrull don't understand them. What might have been a misunderstanding suddenly becomes a battle between the cops and the Skrulls, and in a blink of an eye, Nick Fury and his secret warriors appear. Go, go, go! He shouts to the team, opening fire with his massive gun. Hit them hard, commandos, and stay in my eye line. He orders to his team as the battle begins, and in a matter of moments, the fight ends, with Nick looking at the college students. You kids get back to the dorm, or better yet, get out of the city. But the kids refuse, calling Fury a fascist, telling him that the Skrulls are here to change the world. He sighs in frustration, turning back to his team. But they all look up as the lightning cracks and it smashes into the ground. Let's move, stay close and stay together, Fury tells them. Over in Central Park, Thor has landed hard, standing, glaring at another that has come to join the fight. Who are you supposed to be? He asks, and Bucky glares back, dressed as the new Captain America. Who do I look like? He asks, not backing down, and he stands tall as Thor steps up to him. You wear the uniform of Captain America, a true friend of mine, the greatest Avenger. But you aren't him, are you? Bucky nods. Weren't you dead? The rest of the heroes land in their ship, with Spider-Man asking Thor what he's doing there. Thor raises his hammer, more lightning cracking into the sky, summoning the battle that must be fought. He explains, and Spider-Man nods as the heroes turn to see the Skrull army advancing upon them. Yeah, I think they got the message, he says, and Jessica Drew, the Skrull Empress, is leading that army, Reed Richards glaring at her. You're not here to save us, it's all lies. You're here to punish us. She smiles at him. Well, you should have thought about that before you found it funny to turn our brothers into cows, she points out. Behind the Avengers, Norman Osborn arrives with his Thunderbolts and a group of New York supervillains also joining in. Leave now, last warning, Tony warns the Skrulls, and Spider-Man raises a hand. You guys know we still can't tell Skrulls are real people, right? What if we're hurting our friends? But Reed raises his weapon and explains that it will reveal the Skrulls' true forms. A fair as fight as we're gonna get, he tells them, and the Empress explains to them. Your hate is your own. Your judgment is your own. We are here to save you. We are here to change you. We are here because in spite of all that you have done for our empire, he loves you. Spider-Man raises his hand again. He who? Who are you saying loves us? God, she tells the heroes, and Fury shakes his hand. Yeah, well, my God has a hammer. Iron Man has had enough, and with the mighty Avengers Assemble, the heroes rush against the Skrull army for the final battle. With the Skrulls having been revealed, the heroes leap into battle. Battle cries ring out as energy blasts, weapons, feet, and fists all lash out at the alien invaders. Thor, Ares, Simon, take the front line, Tony shouts as he fires his energy beams. Hit Spider-Woman, Captain America shouts, and Tony turns to the new hero. Yeah, that too, he agrees. But the Skrulls rush into the fight, with Spider-Woman shouting at her warriors. The target is Richards! He dies for the Empire! She commands, and Ares rushes forward with his axe, cleaving through the alien throng. Keep the battle moving forward. Don't give up, he shouts, with Nick Fury continuing to fire his massive gun, suddenly turning back to back with Norman Osborn. Fury, Norman says simply. Norman, you're supposed to be in jail. Fury growls, and Norman merely smiles, firing another burst. So should you. The fight continues, a mad cluster of a battle which sees the heroes and the Skrulls locking into prolonged combat. And in the distance, Bullseye is taking aim and firing, the rounds piercing the eyes of Skrull Yellowjacket, who falls to the ground, squashing another group of Skrulls beneath him. Tony knows that his armor isn't at full strength and apologizes as he flies off to fix it. Do what you must, Thor cries before calling down a lightning strike upon his enemies. A group of Skrull Sue Storms attack Reed, stretching him out, clawing at him, and Fury fires his weapon, ordering his secret warriors to save Reed. Meanwhile, Wolverine is pushing through the fray, launching into combat with the Skrull Empress. He stabs her in the shoulder before she burns him with her energy powers, and he falls away. Meanwhile, Spidey flips, meeting Iron Fist in the battle. Hey, you know what? This ain't so bad, all things considered. These big Earthshakers, I've been around. You know you have to worry when Uatu shows up, Spidey explains, but both heroes glance up, and they see the Watcher staring down at the massive battle. Oh, come on! Spider-Man groans. Elsewhere in the city, Jessica Jones is watching the battle on the news, tears falling down her face. She glances at her child before looking at Jarvis, who stands beside her. Jarvis, I need to go help. Will you please look after Danielle? She asks, and Jarvis promises, with Jessica hugging her daughter before flying away. But in the distance, there's a boom far overhead as Fury glances up. Incoming! He shouts to the heroes as a massive explosion rips through the battlefield, tossing the heroes away and killing many of the Skrulls. The fire dims and Norvar steps forward. My name is Novar, and I am a warrior of the Kree. In the name of Captain Marvel, in the name of the Kree Empire, I tell the invading hordes that this fight is over. The heroes are renewed, and the battle reaches a fever pitch. A wounded Kate Bishop is carried away as Clint grabs her bow long enough to put an arrow through the Skrull Empress's jaw. The Skrull Yellow Jacket is staggered to his feet, realizing that they are losing, and he holds up a remote, tapping a button. He loves us! He loves us all! He whispers. Elsewhere in the battlefield, Janet Van Dyne suddenly begins to gasp as her body spasms. She begins to grow massively, remembering that Hank had given her a new version of the Pym particles. A Hank that she now knows was actually a Skrull. And from the apartment, Jarvis, who is a Skrull, is now holding baby Danielle. See, child, this is why your people will have to submit. We came here willing to die so that God's will could be done. They just don't understand. He whispers to her, but it's the Watcher, Uatu, who looks sadly as Janet continues to grow. Energy exploding out of her, striking the surrounding heroes who all scream in pain. Janet falls. The energy waves still coming off of her, killing all of those around her. But it's Thor that steps forward, fighting against the energy that is killing him, spinning his hammer. I will avenge thee, fat Janet! He bellows, managing to contain the energy in a magical storm before Janet dies. As the Skrull Emperor struggles to her feet, she looks up, seeing Earth's mightiest heroes ready to end the fight, and they rush forward, Wolverine at the head of the pack. But as they get near her, an energy blast rings out and her head explodes. Everyone looks around in shock, and they all turn to see Norman Osborn standing nearby with a smoking rifle. The news choppers having caught the whole thing live. Thunderbolts, make sure none of them weasel away. No loose ends. Norman calls to his team. The Skrulls have been defeated, with Tony ordering the rest of the heroes to head into the sky and defeat the remaining Skrull ships. Keep the casualties light. I want prisoners, Tony tells them. Another craft breaks away from the Skrull fleet, falling to the earth. The rest of the heroes prepare to finish the battle as the ship opens, and they're shocked to see dozens of heroes walking off of the ship. Heroes that they now know were replaced by the Skrulls. The heroes greet each other, but it's Jessica Jones who realizes in shock what's going on. Her eyes go wide and she panics as she sees Jarvis. Oh God, no! She shouts, quickly leaping into the air, flying back to the apartment where she discovers that the Skrull Jarvis has disappeared. Luke Cage quickly arrives after being carried by Carol Danvers and runs to his wife. They took the baby! Jessica yells in fear. Back on the ship, Clint looks up as Bobby Morris steps off the ship and she walks up to him. Oh my God, you look terrible. She tells him with a smile. You look great, he tells her, from the Ronin costume. What are you wearing? She asks as they embrace and kiss. Now rejoined with his actual wife, Reed and Sue rush back to the Baxter building. They rush to the basement, hoping to shut down the energy going to the negative zone portal, but they discover that Johnny and Ben are arguing over the circuit panel while the kids are playing quietly nearby. The blue one, you gotta hit the blue one first, I'm telling you, Johnny, I remember. Ben is grumbling as Johnny shakes his head and leans closer. Why didn't Reed leave a manual? He wonders. Reed steps in helping them, and the portal finally closes and the building suddenly begins to reform. It's later, after the battle has finally ended and the rebuilding has begun, that the president makes a statement to the people of America and the Earth. He thanks the heroes for stopping the invasion, though admits that S.H.I.E.L.D. was compromised and now must officially be shut down. He explains that a new organization must be put in place, one that won't repeat the mistakes of the past, one that will keep the planet safe. As America watches, the president calls to the stage the man that he has picked to lead the new initiative, Norman Osborn. Later in the Avengers Tower, Norman looks on in satisfaction at everything that he has accomplished. He finally puts down his glass of champagne and goes to a secret elevator. He rides it to a sub-basement, where he greets the secret cabal of evil. Doctor Doom, Loki, Emma Frost, the Hood, and Namor all look up as he leans over the table. Thank you for meeting me. Okay, it's a new day, so listen carefully. This is how it's going to be, Norman explains to them. And there you have it. Now, I want to know in the comments down below, is the comic version better than the TV show? As of the time of this video, I'm only on episode 2 of the TV show, and the TV show isn't bad, I'm enjoying it, but it's not this comic. That's my biggest complaint. This comic is a much better thing, and I feel like we could have done a better job of the TV show if we even had 1 or 2 core line superheroes showing up. But, you know, you let me know in the comments down below what you think. The show or the comic, which is better? On that note, I'll see you guys next time right here.